The Bible is where Christians go for teaching and instruction. It's where we learn about God, about ourselves, about the plan of salvation, about our place in that plan. We learn about our future. So how do we learn these things? Well, the Bible includes examples of stories, instruction of law, inspiration of poetry, and wisdom of experience. But alongside these big topics, we also find some instruction that is practical, everyday, little nuggets of advice, or as I like to call them, simple rules. So this video is a little bit different. Instead of focusing on some of the big issues, the complex topics, we're going to look at some simple rules. We're going to have a quick look at them, and we're going to see if they can make a difference in our daily lives. So today we're going to look at 7 simple rules. Now don't worry, it's a quick look. We're not going to take too long looking at them. So maybe over the next week we can try to follow them. Maybe we can put them into practice. Why not try a different one each day? Let's see if these 7 simple rules make a difference in our lives. Don't even grumble, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. Are you a glass half full or half empty sort of person? Me, I'm what kind of glass? Maybe this one's for me then. What's Paul talking about here? Well, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he's using the story of the children of Israel to make a point. He says, they were saved by the waters of the Red Sea, you're saved by the waters of the baptism. They were fed by spiritual food by God, the manna. You're fed by spiritual food from God. He's talking about the communion there. And he says that in the midst of the desert, they drank from the rock. But despite all of the protection, despite the provision, the children of Israel grumbled. Okay then, so according to Paul, what's wrong with grumbling? Well, you see, grumbling meant the children of Israel focused on the problems, not on God's provision, not on God's protection, not on God's presence. God, you see, was in the midst of their camp. You saw him in the smoke, you saw him in the fire, you saw him in the tabernacle. It's the closest as a people they would ever physically be to God. And yet grumbling made them forget all of this. They forgot the rock and focused on the desert. So, are things bad? Very likely. But if I focus on grumbling about it, I forget to acknowledge God's provision, his protection, and his presence. So this little simple rule tells us, don't focus on the desert, the problems. Focus on the rock, where living water is found. Because if we forget it, we'll die of thirst. Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so that you will find favour and a good reputation in the sight of God and man. I know what you're thinking. This one's too obvious. Of course we're supposed to be kind. And yet, we're not. That's why you'll have seen the social media posts reminding you to treat everyone with kindness when you meet them, because you don't know their situation. And I'm sure you've either seen or heard Ellen end her show with the words, "Be kind." But actually, according to the book of Proverbs, being kind is only half the rule. The other part is truth. The simple rule is kindness and integrity. You see, it's actually quite easy to act kind when we've been watched, or if we hope we are being. It's not too difficult to modify our behaviour. It's not too difficult to put on a false smile. It's not too difficult to savour nice words without really meaning it. In other words, you've got kindness wrapped around your neck like a bright scarf for all the world to see. But you've forgotten to write that truth on your heart. It's also easy for us to mock Ellen and her be kind while she treats her production crew badly. But how often do we fall into the same mistake, acting nice for the world to see, but not really meaning it? True kindness has an integrity. It comes from the heart. It's on display when no one is looking. True kindness is only possible if you have truth and integrity in your heart. Because what's inside shows on the surface. Because the root determines the fruit. True kindness finds favour and a good reputation not just with man, but with our God. Because he sees and knows what's inside. Treat others as you want them to treat you. This is what the law and the prophets are all about. Now this simple rule shouldn't be new. After all, interpretations of it have been taught since Confucius, and versions of it can be found in Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, Taoism, and Zoroastrianism. But if we look closely, we can see why this simple rule is foundational for Christian living. Now, you see, unfortunately, we often view the golden rule as cosmic karma. Sorry, we're Christians, so let me rephrase that. We view it as cosmic covenant. In other words, if we do this, then we will receive this. We do it to get something back. We turn grace into works. So why do we do it? Why is this simple rule so important to live by? We do it to undo the rule of sin in this world. We were created in the image of God. We were created for relationship. Relationship with God, relationship with each other. Our focus was outside of ourselves, on others. Sin came into the world and changed all that. Sin broke the relationship. It broke the relationship with God and it broke the relationship with others. Our focus is on ourselves. We become selfish. God's grace fixes the problem. It restores the relationships. It restores the relationship with God, restores the relationship with each other, and it restores our focus onto others. So the golden rule, doing to others as we would have them do to us, is a challenge to the rule of sin in this fallen world. By putting others first, we say sin does not rule over me and my actions. Putting others first is restoring the relationship that has been broken by sin. Putting others first creates a new world and builds the kingdom of God. I mean, brothers and sisters, the appointed time has grown short. From now on, let even those who have wives be as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as if they had no possessions, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. Okay, this is another simple rule from Paul. And don't worry, it's easier than it seems. Now don't get the wrong idea, he's not telling the married couples to act as if they were still single and do things they shouldn't. What's Paul really saying here? Well, he's just finished talking about marriage, and that's for another sermon. And so the wives bit is just a transition for him. The crux of this little rule is the last line. The present form of this world is passing away. Paul is saying, don't get too comfortable. Paul is saying, don't get caught up in the status quo. Don't live your life or make decisions based upon your present circumstances. Paul is saying, hold lightly to the things of this world. Paul is saying, don't get caught up in lifestyle, possessions, even family. Paul is reminding us that all of these are temporary. So what's the simple rule? Live simply. Hold lightly to the things of this world. Remember that it's all temporary. Don't base your self-worth, your choices, or your lifestyle on this temporary world that's passing away. Hold it lightly. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up, as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those that hear. Words are important. God's word brings life. It literally called the world into being, and it tells the story of God bringing salvation to those that hear. Our words are important too, because they're windows onto the soul. Luke 7:42 says, your words show what is in your heart. But there's more. According to Paul here, our words can bring life too. He doesn't just focus on the negative, let no evil come out of your mouths. He focuses on the positive. He tells us to speak words that build up. And then he shares this amazing thought. Our words have the possibility of giving grace. Just think about that today. God is asking you to join him in his ministry of life-giving, life-healing words. So don't just bite your tongue. Open your mouth and let words of grace out. Humble yourself before the Lord, and he will exalt you. So what's the hardest virtue? Well, I'd say humility has got to be up there. You see, it goes against everything that this life teaches us. Make a name for yourself, sell yourself, show the world that you're living your best life ever. And don't forget to Instagram it. We even find ways to show off and brag when we pretend we're not. I'm sure you've either seen, heard, or maybe even done it. You know, the humble brag? So why is James telling us to be humble? Well, that could be a full-length sermon in itself, so let's just have the short version. We often mistake humility for meekness or weakness of different sorts. We mistake it for being a doormat. We mistake it for being walked over, for being taken advantage of. But this isn't what James means. James' idea of humbling yourself before the Lord is simply submitting yourself to God. It means putting yourself second. It means giving up those privileges that you think you own or you deserve. It's lifting up the Lord, not yourself. But here's the amazing thing. When you put God first, he lifts you up. By the seventh day, God had finished his work, and so he rested. God blessed the seventh day and made it special, because on that day he rested from his work. As Seventh-day Adventist Christians, we know about the importance of the Sabbath. It's the memorial of creation, It's keeping a command from God. It's keeping it as a sign of our covenant promise with God. Keeping it distinguishes us from others. But it's so much more. And if you're interested in that, I preached a sermon on that last year. You can go back and find that. But I just want to highlight one idea of Sabbath today that we often forget, because it ties into our idea of keeping simple rules. God completed the work, and then he invited us to join in the rest. Now this, right at the beginning of the Bible, is grace. God does it and invites us to the benefit. The Sabbath command has not obedience at its heart, but the initiative of a gracious God. In every aspect of our Christian experience, we see the same thing that we find in the Sabbath. God takes the initiative. God does the work in us. And then we're called to join him in the rest and the blessing that comes from his actions. So if you've been trying to keep these simple rules over the week, particularly if you're doing it daily and you're now day 7, you'll probably find trying to keep them goes one of 2 ways. The first one is you fail miserably. I mean, you started off well, you've got good intentions, you try really hard, but you just can't keep things going the way you want to. Or the second way is you're crushing it. You're doing such a good job. You put the effort in, you kept at it, and you really accomplished something special. So here's the truth bomb. If you think you failed, you need the Sabbath. If you think you did it, you need the Sabbath. And if you're a little bit column A, a little bit column B, well, you need the Sabbath too. If you're struggling to keep the rules, remember, God completed the work and he invites you to join his rest. If you feel like you're failing, remember that the Sabbath teaches us that what God does goes before what he asks of us. So if you can't follow these simple rules, the answer isn't try harder. It's allow God to do his work. Allow God to work in you. Allow God's Spirit to fill you and change you. Allow God to finish what he has started. So celebrate God's work in your life and remember the Sabbath. If you're crushing it, if you're doing well by yourself, if your hard work appears to be paying off and the rules are easy to follow, then remember the Sabbath. Remember that you haven't done anything. Remember that God has been working through you. These aren't your good works, they're God's good works. So stop trying to take the credit for God. Stop trying so hard. So celebrate God's work in your life and remember the Sabbath. So I hope you'll try to follow these 7 simple rules. I hope you find that these small things make a big difference in your life. Maybe let us know in the comments how it's going. And maybe hit the subscribe button to know when new sermons are posted. But this week, have a look at these 7 simple rules. Do not grumble. Practice kindness and integrity. Do unto others. Hold lightly. Use words of grace. Humble yourself. And remember the Sabbath.